you. So let's do it together. Yesterday we got a basic setup of this project, which is if I hit play, it creates a grid board. We can drag out shapes from the UI that spawn on the board, and they can be moved and snap around. This is our floating eyeball that we will need to change and fix so that it's not in the way of the camera. But more importantly, this will eventually be a tabletop Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, any tabletop game that you wish, an easy click and drag networked battle map. Where we left off, and what I'm going to do just for a little bit today is work on the networking, because if we do this as two, let's say a server and two clients, and we make new editor windows, one here, one here. This is the server, as you can see over here. The server can move around and the client sees it, but if the client moves, it's not happening on the server. So our replication is not working. That works, however. That doesn't, because we're not sending any commands to the server to move this cube around, so the server doesn't know what's going on, nor does the client. So these are now out of sync. The spawn occurs on the server, because we call that in our game mode. Spawn token on tile. It handles it. Our player controller is where it is called, I believe, or no, it is in the in our UI. So we go to the thumbnail. This is from the UI what we grab out there and drop, and this is that. So on canceled, because we're dropping it out here. So if we drop it here, it still works because it's being canceled, because this is set to invisible. So that's considered a cancel when we drop it out there, rather than on a UI. So it gets canceled. We grab the mouse position on the viewport, scale it to our viewport scale, deproject it from the screen into the world, into 3D, out about 2,000 units, Unreal units. From start to end, we're line tracing outwards and trying to hit something. And if we do hit something, which we should maybe make it an if we did hit something, so it doesn't happen if we don't hit anything. That might be worth looking into. Anyway, it grabs the player controller, and we call the server function from the player controller spawn token on tile. In player controller, this is executed on the server, which gets our game mode and calls spawn token on tile from location. And we use a row name because we've stored our shapes in a database, a data table of cube, cone, sphere. So that's what is stored. It's looking up this name, goes over here, and we have references to the class, and that is then spawned on the grid. So let's spend some time getting our pawn to move on the network and figure out why that isn't working. So I have a to-do here. It needs to be happening in the player controller. That was what I was wondering, is maybe it's the player controller that should be calling the server because the pawn... Well, yeah. Why don't we, let's move stuff. Let's move things over to the player controller. So here we go. Player controller. We will need... That's the tile. Pawn header. So we're going to need this setup player input component, I think, in our player controller. And that is in public. Setup input component. Yep, there it is. So we need to implement this, and why don't we just move all of these, all our movement. Let's put all the movement into the player controller. Yeah. And these can be protected. So let's change this to BG player controller. And we're going to get this stuff, yep, and put it over here. This is going to go here, 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 and here. Hear that. We're going to have to grab get our pawn, get pawn, add movement input. Move that here as well. We need to get our pawn's yep. Let's see, we need to cast to ABG pawn, get pawn, get, and then we need to the camera. So this we're going to need to get our include up here, include BG pawn, camera. Where's our camera component? We should be able to get that. It is in protected, so we need to get a just in C++, because we have these in blueprint read only. So in blueprints we can get these out of the protected, because it comes. I think it makes a blueprint getter, but because we're in C++, we need to make a getter. So we'll return a uCamera component pointer get camera component, and it's a constant. It will return our camera component. So this this is where our forward declaration. So maybe I will move Yeah, let me put that in front of it here. Get rid of that. I don't know if we're going to be able to return it without having it included there. Get rid of it there. This is where it would be neater just to have our, I guess, our forward declarations up above if we were going to make getters for all these things. I'm not sure. So we want to get camera component. Whoops, wait. Here, yep. Get camera component. Yep, it's incomplete. So can we just do it here? Looks like it. We'll see if this yells at me when I try and compile, though. So we need to do that same thing here. So now this is being done in the player controller. Let's not do this yet. So we'll get rid of, comment that out. Over here, we need to just comment that out. Get pawn, add controller pitch input. Okay, and then these things we need to do with a super. Let's not forget that. And then this needs to, okay. Just in case it crashes. It's happy. Cool. So our player controller, pawn replicates, replicate movement. So whoop, there's the crash. It didn't like look up. Wonder why it didn't like look up. Let's try it again. See if it. Yep. Okay. So let's stop the not do the camera just for a moment. Let's see if we can just get movement forward and right replicated on a pawn over the network. And all right, build succeeded. Okay, we're moving, and the server moves just fine. Go behind the client. Let's see. Okay, client's moving still, so that's happy, but it's not replicating. So we need to call these things on a server now. So let's try something right here. If has authority, UE log temp warning, server move forward. So I think, yeah, we needed to put that inside our 0, otherwise it's going to just keep yelling. Bottom, shrink that. Yep, okay, so that's calling it. This is not, which makes sense. Client does not have authority, so client is not going to be going inside that loop. So we don't want to use that. What we want to do is just call the server one. So on the player controller, we're now going to make u function server reliable. Category is, wait, what happens if we just make these server reliable blueprint callable? So, and then the pawn is replicated. Will it come back? Okay. Okay, so the client can't do it. Is it doing it, but we're not seeing it? It's going inside that loop. Pawn 1, pawn 2, pawn, let's see, I think pawn 1 is the client, so let's lock that. This is on, let's go on the server side. Will those, okay, so it's not changing. So add this get pawn add movement input is not, so this is being called on the server player controller, but there's no player controller for this pawn. What if let's do some reading. If the teleport on the client is caused by player input, move locally, then use an RPC to the server to do the same thing. So let's make these local again. So these are our local ones. And now we're going to make local client side movement functions. And now we want to have server side movement functions. Local, just client. Copy and paste. This is going to be server reliable. Maybe void move forward server float value. Void move right server float value. So after we do this, we need to call move forward server with that value. And then after we call this, we need to call move right with the value. Whoop. I've got a Band-Aid on my finger. I just donated plasma, so not only do I have low energy, but I keep tapping the wrong buttons on occasion. So I want this above that one. Move forward server implementation. What we're going to do is I think we can do the same thing. However, we don't. If we are the server, we don't call this twice. So if we're not the server, call it. Same thing here. Call it. So let's see if this works. Server is able to move around. Okay, client's moving. It's still not. Still not doing this. Let's try something. Do we even, are we getting something? So we're going in there. We have a pawn. So how about why isn't that working? Pawn add movement input not replicating to server. Maybe it's because we're using pawns instead of characters. So maybe let's, rather than a pawn, let's do a character. Let's switch our eyeballs, even though it's dumb, and we don't need all of the stuff that's going on under the hood. Let's make a character. This is going to be the BG player character. It looks like the character movement has replication under the hood already. So we're going to do that. this up to here. Comment that out. We're going to move these over here. Change our scope. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. We'll need to fix that. Move these over into our setup. Fix the scope again. Let's go ahead and move our camera stuff over as well. Comment. I know this rotational stuff won't actually replicate, so we're going to have to do that manually at some point. Our forward vector, add movement input. We need to add in some stuff that we put into our pawn. So we want our camera we want a camera at least. So that will be, we'll put that above our functions. Or no, we'll put it below our functions. Let's do that again. Over here in our setup, B replicates as true, and set replicated movement. I don't know what the side effects. What are the difference of all these? I don't know the differences on a lot of those. Not sure. Camera component, create a default subobject of view camera component. Camera component. And we want to it's first person, so we don't need the spring arm yet. So camera component, we're going to set up attachment to our what does a character come with by default? It comes with a mesh, a skeletal mesh, which is not what we want. But this is the character movement, and this is what I have a feeling is going to replicate easier out of the box than our pawn's floating pawn movement for some reason was not replicating. So it's got velocity. Well, we're going to just do a skeletal cube. and shrink our capsule down to it. Move it in the center. I liked our eyeball better, but we'll just do that for now. Can we make it a little bigger? Yeah. So mesh, the character mesh. So how do we get that? Camera component, set up attachment to the mesh. There it is. It's just mesh. Does that work? No, can't get it. Get mesh. We'll see. Okay. Right, this camera component get forward vector. Get the right vector. Whoop. Right. Let's get rid of that for now. We got rid of, oh, right. We shouldn't have cut that. There. You can have your camera back. Okay, that built. There's our big giant camera. Let's move him forward to the front. We now want to set this to our BP player character. Woohoo! Right, because gravity. Let's turn off gravity. Where would that be? It'd be in mesh. Yep, physics. Disable gravity. Why? Capsule? There it is. Do we have to do the capsule's the... So let's get rid of gravity on both. We're not even simulating physics, so what's going on here? That's a skeletal mesh component. I don't know why it's falling. Maybe collision presets. Well, world settings, we're going to override gravity. There we go. And there's our movement, which is working server side. It's all ice skatey. And we hit the client. Just want to move back. There we go. Oh, stop, stop, stop. Hey, and the client moves. So it is a thing. Character movement component works. You know what? What if... I don't know. I just don't like having to use a character because we don't need that. We just want our eyeball. We just want our eyeball back, and I want that replicating. So what if we... Yeah, let's... I don't know. I want to keep trying to make this work on the pawn because I don't want all this junk that comes with the character. So let's put these back. Copy this time, not cut. Let's go ahead and grab them again. Put them over here. You know what? I want to put them below. And then let's fix our scope. And our input, we need this stuff again. And we need to fix our scope again. So out of the box, let's see if this is working again with just the server side. Flip this back to our pawn. Yes, okay, so we still have it. Client sees it. Server does not see our movement. And if we get rid of that, what happens? We lose that. So that what's happening here is it's doing this and rotating around that point, and that's why when we flip around we see the ball. So we're going to want to make our rotation affect the ball, the static mesh, rather than our camera is one thing we could fix and try and do right now. So add controller pitch input. Should no, we'll deal with that later. So this replicate movement's not working. What was I going to do? I was going to, rather than add movement input, I was going to on the player controller, there's something that on movement. So let me see. On movement. On character movement updated. Right. So rather than the tick, which is what that was doing originally, what I'm going to do instead is do a dynamic dynamically bind something. So add dynamic. Yeah, add dynamic. ABG pawn. I've done this before. I just need to open that. So this will get called at the end of every movement. At the end of movement. So rather than putting it on the tick. Yeah. Okay. So we do this in the begin play on. Oh, this is, we're not using character movement. On movement. Okay, so we can't call that. We can't do that. However, I believe we can bind to that event. So we need to set up a delegate. So UE4 C++ delegate. And what we're going to want to do is send in one. It's a delegate with one parameter. So up here, we do declare delegate, one param. The delegate's name is going to be, what do we want to call this? It's going to be F update transform on server. And we're sending in a float, and it'll be called, or no, we're sending in a transform, and it'll be called, can we send in a transform? F transform, and it'll be just called, say new, or yeah, new transform. So there's our signature. We now need to make this function, which is u function. Yeah, it has to be a u function, I think, in order, and then it'll be called void. We called it update transform on server, and we send in an F transform new transform. Okay, now we need to, so this is, actually we need a server reliable. This is on movement, and this is in BG pawn again, so this is, there we go. Okay, so this needs to have implementation after it, and this is going to call need to bind, so F server, what was it, F update transform, F update transform on server dot update transform on server. Oh, I've done this before. Right. Okay. Over here, we need to F update transform on server, and this will be just called update transform, I think. And then we do there we go, dot bind sp single parameter, and then we want to send in an f transform comma, or no, we're going to send in get actor transform comma, and this is where we do f abg pawn update transform. What are we binding? Oh, we're binding a thing to a thing. So move forward. No. And oh, right. So abg pawn move forward. Oh, come on. Event dispatchers. Here we go. Ah, that's what I forgot. this needs to be, we're going to move this. It is a U property. That's what I messed up. It is blueprint assignable. Category, we'll give it ABG pawn event dispatchers. And it is F. This is where we paste. And it might need to be in public. Yep. Nope. What's going on here? We're making it right here. Declare delegate, one parent. Does it need to be a dynamic? That's probably it. Declare dynamic delegate, one param. Dynamic multicast. There we go. Now it's happy. Now over here, we do our update transform on server dot broadcast. That okay. And this is where we need to, where is it gonna broadcast? We broadcast here. Update transform on server dot broadcast, and this is where it needs to get actor transform. Cool. All right. And what does it do when it's calling that? It's a server function. So I think this will work on the server, the pawn, because it's replicated. So there should be one on the server. It's going to move the server version of this pawn. We are going to do set actor transform to the new transform. Let's see if that worked. Whoop. You need a semicolon with that macro, apparently. Succeeded. We did not crash. We're good there. We're not good there. Once again, we're still not replicating. So this is the problem then. So I think we can. think we can bind, so maybe so this won't be a server side. This is going to be calling on our controller. We want to make a ufunction server reliable blueprint callable category is equal to that. This will be our void update transform on server. F transform new transform. If we're not the server, well, no, this is calling on the server. We don't need that yet. So we're going to set get pawn set actor transform to the new transform. Okay, happy. Over here, we're going to cast to a BG player controller our controller, and we're going to call update transform on server and pass new transform. Sure, let's make it const. Okay. I'm sure you can hear that. As usual, server's fine. That is still not updating on the server. Let's replicate the capsule component. See what happens. Nothing. What's going on over here? Capsule, okay, that does not replicate. They don't have replication on anything over here. What about this movement? The component itself does not replicate. So we can get rid of, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that stuff. Is this getting called? It's not, and it's not. So that's the issue. We didn't bind this, right? That's what's up. Okay. So add dynamic. Let me check this YouTube video again. This. And the function name we want to do is update transform. And that needs to just be I think just abg pawn update transform, right? No? Okay. I'm not doing this right. Let's see, pawn. on teleported? What about floating? Yeah, maybe. On component activated dot add dynamic this abg pawn update transform. So why can't, what's going on here? Oh, func. Not func, const. Let's get rid of const. They don't like those for some reason. So it's also protected. So we're going to put that in public. Source functions got one, oh, right. Whoa, no, that's not what I want. I want move forward. Can I add a, can I bind? No, okay. This, what is this? One component activated. Perhaps this is not what we want to be doing. Okay. So, event delegate, not what we want to do. We do want the update transform though. We're just going to do update transform with get actor location. Get actor transform. Each time we move, we'll be updating. Hopefully this is going to call on the server every time we move. We're good there. We're good there, and aha, look at that. It is not perfect. So we can work on that. However, we're on our way. So I think the issue is it stops calling it when we hit 0 here. So these keys are on, off, 0, 1, nothing in between. So as soon as we lift, it stopped calling it. So we moved a little bit more in the delay. So that's where it was on the tick. I really wish, I don't know why I set replicate movement. What is add movement input doing, really? It's adding an input vector to the movement component. And what does add input vector do? Is it just bypass? What is going on here? So if we got a movement component, we're adding input vector to the movement component, but that's just getting the pawn owner back here. And so the else again is just add in. I don't think it's actually doing anything. It went right back to just pawn. Is it a force? No. So we check is move input ignored? No. So we go inside control input vector. We're adding the world excel. We're taking so. And that's just nef vector. Control input vector. Let's consume it. This is Rider, so yeah, it's JetBrains, but I'm doing it's with Unreal Engine, so going back and forth between them right now, trying to replicate pawn movement over a network. So that's the server client. It's kind of buggy, but we're building a battle map for tabletop games with grid-based lock movement. So that's the goal, is to eventually make a drag and drop easy to use with a very small learning curve for tabletop games to do a quick visualization. So figured I would just stream it as I go in case people who are interested in this kind of thing want to learn something while I mess up. It's going to be riveting, I swear. Right now, I'm trying to figure out why in Unreal Engine, apparently pawn movement is not replicated over to the server while character movement is. No, not Scratch. It's Unreal Engine and C++ behind it. So what if we just move update transform outside? It's going to always be calling it even if the value is 0, but that should reduce the glitchiness. So come back over here, server on the left, client on the right. Whoop, come back. Server moves around, client moves around. Hey. Okay. So those are working. Let's get. Is that the frame rate that you're seeing in here in Unreal Engine? Like that? Yeah, I noticed that too looking back on it. I think it's because, honestly, I don't know why in here it doesn't translate, because I'm capturing, or the stream is set at 1080p at 30 FPS. My monitor runs at 144. So maybe that's the issue, is it can't divide properly, but I don't think it's entirely too important at this stage. I'm not playing a gaming thing, but unless you need to see code move past your eyes at like 60 frames per second, you know. Okay, so let's get this back on. Let's get our camera going again. So camera, we have our look up and turn set to the mouse. I'm going to make a Boolean. Why are you yelling at me? Transforms not implemented? Yes, it is. Let's make a Boolean of uint8 imGUI library. What's an imGUI library? Uint8 of b is down, and it is 1. So we're going to immediate mode graphical user interface. That's cool. I literally started doing C++ about a year ago in January as a New Year's resolution, and then started doing Unreal Engine in June or so in the summer during the quarantine. I did actually with C++ make a game engine from scratch with SDL2. There's a Udemy course by a pretty cool guy. I think his name's Gustavo. I can't remember. And that was pretty cool because we made a whole 2-dimensional SDL kind of pixelated game engine. So that was pretty cool to learn. But I wanted to just get going on making some games, so I switched to an engine that was established. Yeah, I recommend checking it out. Let me see if I can find it. It is called, where is it? Yeah, it's taught by Gustavo Pezzi on Udemy. And yes, it uses SDL2. What was I doing? Okay, so I need to input component bind action, what do I call it? Right click, i.e. pressed, yep, this, and what we're going to do, actually, I think we can just detect if the right mouse button is down, can't we? If mouse button, controller get, let's find out. U4 C++ get mouse button down, or state. Yep, okay, you can check the is input key down. That's what I want. Where is it? Player controller. Okay. Axis key. Well, it's not an axis, but we're going to get, let's see, our static mesh set relative rotation. And what we want to do is get actor rotation, add a new F rotator, imgui, the immediate graphical thingy. Ooh, well that's cool. Oh, that is cool. I don't know if that's exactly, that looks a little bit more than what I need at the moment, but it's pretty cool looking. I found the GitHub on Dear MGUI, and it looks like they had something about the custom engine. Get the rotation, add a rotator. This is for up and down on the I'll have to look more into what it can do. Rotation is roll, pitch, yaw. And an F rotator wants pitch, yaw, roll. And this is going to be just our value 0, 0, and find out what happens. What are you planning on doing with MGUI? Just kind of screwing around with it to see what you can do. Okay. Sort of working, but not really. Okay. text rendering, huh? We do a setting, the rotation. Nice. Like the Latin language? Or for Latin-based texts? Gotcha. That makes sense. So why isn't this working? I can imagine. So we're getting the static mesh component, set the relative rotation. Let's open up a previous project of mine and look at how that worked. Yeah, like Hebrew. Okay, so in this one, this is a character. And we were just doing that. However, that's the wrong one. With layouts, do you mean the GUI itself, or like the script on the type on page, how it looks? I've heard good things about Qt. Is it? I haven't done any GUI stuff actually. I do. I like the behind the scenes code stuff, but every time I start working with GUIs, I did launch it once on my Manjaro distribution just to take a look at what it was, and it took a while to just launch. And yeah, I heard about the expensive to license, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing like free open source stuff, then there's no cost apparently, but that is a good way to go about it. Add controller yaw input. Ooh, nice. This is it. Okay. So I'm going to forget about that and just do controller add pitch. That's cool. I was writing from scratch uh, a little arena simulator utilizing the rules of D&D 5th edition, so that it was just text in the terminal, and it would launch and you would build your character, and then using a text-based menu system you could spawn bad guys, and then it would do a turn. You'd start combat and it would go through and following the rules, complete combat, and then once combat was completed, if you're still alive, you could go and buy things with money that you looted off the bodies, and then start a new arena session. And you just it was like kind of roguelike, and you just keep going until your character died. Um, and I wanted to put it on a GUI, so I might look at MGUI, because that's where I got stuck. Was how do you get out of the terminal? Even though the terminal can be kind of cool, I wanted just like something stupid like Dwarf Fortress. So, what was I doing? We need to set the relative rotation. The Cherno. Yes, I do. Actually, my dad's an engineer, and he's been watching the Cherno, and he recommended it. I haven't started watching the Cherno yet, but I've heard good things. So on the tick, if is locally controlled, F, we're going to make a new rotator to our camera component, get relative rotation, convert. I don't know, some interesting pun. Remote view pitch back from its compressed 1 byte form. We do new rotator dot pitch, remote view pitch 360 and then the camera component, we set the relative rotation to the new rotator. Okay. We want there's that happening. But I don't want the camera rotating around that. I want the entire static mesh rotating. So I don't want that. I want mesh. An elegant name. You got to do something silly for a while until you can come up with the elegant name, and then eventually you'll be like, wait, I kind of like the silly name. Maybe add local rotation. Point F, and it's roll. And let's add a little cube. And we'll shrink it. Whoa. Not the roll. The yaw. I always get pitch, yaw, and roll mixed up, no matter how many times I know. You pitch an airplane, you yaw, and you roll, but it's hard to keep track of those. Oh, okay, so it's click and drag. I just want to invert that, though it's not perfect. What is happening here? Oh, that's why. Okay, so I want pitch to be inverted. So we're going to multiply that by -1. That's better. Though I don't necessarily want to do that. So how do I prevent that from happening? Though, seeing the shadow on the ground there, it is rotating the sphere now, the eyeball, which is what I wanted. For sure, man, and good luck to you with your library. Thanks for swinging in. I'll be here week to week. Maybe add relative rotation rather than local. There we go. Hooray. Cool. We're getting somewhere. We don't need to do that. We just want to add to the body of the eyeball itself. And then we need to update the transform again. So if value is not equal to 0.f, you're going to call that. You're always going to update the transform, though. I don't have a way of around that yet. So this should... It's not doing it. Okay, movement. Why is the rotation not? Let's find out. Okay. No. Come on, man. Maybe it needs to be replicated? Yeah, there we go. Cool. Make another little sphere. It's going to be the pupil. And that will be there. We're going to make this... Yeah. Why not? Is there a fire or something? No? How about gold? Yeah, we'll do gold. Shrink it a little bit more. All right, there's our pupil. That's not being called to the server, though. So Why isn't it replicating? Let's find out. Server goes around, but up and down do not. Client does not rotate at all, but moves. So what we want is static mesh component get so the transform maybe we want wait. Maybe I want to do add relative. So I'm going to set the actor's relative location to a new rotation, which is going to be get actor rotation, add a new F rotator, add the rotator of that, right? Why wouldn't that work? Aha, there we go. We're looking up and down. And our client moves around. And our server moves around. Perfect. We're good. We got it. Awesome. We don't need the player character. We can get rid of that. Get rid of it over here too. And we're going to delete it. And delete it. I'm curious, do we need that? Oops. No, we don't. So that's stupid code. We don't need that. Cool. So nothing's on tick. Nothing's on tick right now. So if we get turn off tick, we're still moving around. Perfect. We can still plop things down and move them. Plop things down. These just aren't replicated yet, so or the action of picking them up and moving them is not put on the server, so they're not being seen. However, in just about 2 hours, we managed to get our movement replicated. I want to make the rotation feel better? What does it feel like in full screen? I guess it's okay. We wouldn't want it to turn more than that, probably. So there we go. I think that's where I'll leave it for today. We are successfully networked. So movement is moving between a client and a server. So we've got our little beholder eyes. Actually, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make the dungeon master is going to be an eye, like a beholder, and the players, maybe minor, smaller beholders or something. But I think this works for now, for proof of concept. And we'll get these actions set to the server next time, so that this all will be translated to what they see as well. Cool. Well, said who 13, thank you for joining. And the conversation about MGUI, I will take a look at that. Until next time,